Edgar Allan Poe was born in Boston, Massachusetts on January 19, 1809. His father, David Poe Jr., left his family early on, and his mother, Eliza Poe, died when he was only 3 years old. Separated from his siblings, he went to live with foster parents, the Allan family, who were tobacco merchants in Virginia. As a teenager, Poe would often write poetry on the back of his foster father's business papers.
Poe attended the University of Virginia, but he could barely afford his tuition. Poe asked John Allan, his foster father, for money, but because the two had a bad relationship, Allan refused. Poe turned to gambling to try to come up with the money, but he ended up in debt. When he came home from university, he discovered that his fiancée had become engaged to someone else. Poe was heartbroken. He released his first book, Alaroth and Other Minor Poems, and Tamerlane and Other Poems, while studying at West Point, where he was enlisted in the military. Poe was later discharged from the military from not being able to handle his duties. He and his foster father continued to argue while he was at West Point, and Poe finally cut ties with him.
After leaving West Point, he decided to focus on his writing full-time. He lived with his Aunt Maria and cousin Virginia. She became a writing inspiration to him and a love interest. The two got married when she was 13 or 14 years old. When he returned to Richmond in 1835, he went to work for a magazine called the Southern Literary Messenger. There he gained the reputation of a cutthroat critic because he wrote such harsh reviews. However, his aggressive personality and alcohol problems resulted in him leaving the magazine 2 years later. He went on to release a collection of spine-tingling stories and created the genre of detective fiction. Poe won a literary prize for The Gold Bug in 1843. Poe became a household name when he released the poem, The Raven.
A scandal then happened in his life. Poe claimed that a fellow poet, Henry Wadsworth Longfellow, was a plagiarist. However, this was never proven, and it resulted in a bad backlash for Poe. Poe continued to write and started to examine his own thoughts in writing through essays such as The Philosophy of Composition and The Poetic Principle. In 1847, Poe fell into a depression after the death of his wife, Virginia. He continued to work and write, but he began to struggle physically and financially.
Poe's death is quite the mystery. He left Richmond on September 17th and was supposed to be on his way to Philadelphia. He was found in Baltimore in very bad physical state. He was then taken to Washington College Hospital, where he died on October 7, 1849. Poe's last words were, "Lord, help my poor soul." There are many theories of what Poe died from. It was said that he died of congestion of the brain, but the other popular theory was his alcoholism. Now that you know a little about Poe's background, you will have a greater appreciation and understanding for his poetry. The poem Annabel Lee is clearly about his love, Virginia Clem. The name Annabel Lee is much more poetic than the name Virginia Clem, but notice that both names have 3 syllables in the first name and 1 syllable in the last name. It was many and many a year ago in a kingdom by the sea, that a maiden there lived whom you may know by the name of Annabel Lee. And this maiden she lived with no other thought than to love and be loved by me. I was a child, and she was a child, in this kingdom by the sea. But we loved with a love that was more than love, I and my Annabel Lee. With a love that the wings seraph of heaven coveted her and me. And this was the reason that long ago, in this kingdom by the sea, a wind blew out of a cloud, chilling my beautiful Annabel Lee, so that her high-born kingsman came and bore her away from me, to shut her up in a sepulchre in this kingdom by the sea. the angels not so happy in heaven when envying her and me? Yes, that was the reason, as all men know, in this kingdom by the sea, that the wind came out of the cloud by night, chilling and killing my Annabel Lee. At first read, this seems to just be a poem about Poe's lost love, which it is, but at the same time it is also about a battle between heaven and hell, the innocent and the evil. He uses symbols to achieve this. Underlined in red, the word kingdom comes up several times. He mentions covet and envy, and how royal high knights took Annabel Lee. This is his way of showing the tyranny and cruelty Poe feels in his world. Every woman in his life, including his mom, sister, and love, died early. He has no control over this, just as he has no control over how the Kingsmen treat Annabel Lee. The kingdom acts as a symbol of powerful people, while the sea becomes a symbol of the power of nature, as well as beauty and innocence. Not only does he mention the sea many times, he also talks about clouds, heaven, and being a child. All these symbols add to the dreamy but haunting mood of the poem, and also show Poe's conflict between his realities, that he has no control over his life and his loss, and how he feels when he's with Annabel Lee, in the clouds and dreaming. Finally, Poe's use of meter, internal rhyme, end rhyme, and alliteration all tie together to finish the piece. He follows a pattern of stressed and unstressed syllables, which can be seen in purple. Note that whenever a word internally rhymes or has an end rhyme, it falls on a stressed syllable. This is Poe's way of emphasizing those words. The last two lines have alliteration in the words sepulcher, sea, sounding, and again in sea. Once again, the words that follow the pattern of alliteration are stressed syllables. The alliteration of the sound adds to the eerie mood. The Raven is the tale of a conversation between a man and a bird, but also it is the story of a man forever plagued by the loss of his love, Lenore. The Raven won't leave the speaker alone, constantly reminding him of Lenore, and by the end of the poem, the man completely loses his sanity. This type of situation resembles all of the loss Poe has felt in his personal life, and he uses many poetic devices to channel his feelings into the poetry. Once upon a midnight dreary, while I pondered weak and weary over many a quaint and curious volume of forgotten lore, while I nodded, nearly napping, suddenly there came a tapping, as though someone gently rapping at my chamber door. "'Tis some visitor," I muttered, tapping at my chamber door, "only this and nothing more." In the very first stanza of The Raven, Poe uses internal rhyme, end rhyme, and alliteration to demonstrate the raven's never-ending presence in Poe's life. The E sounds, underlined in blue, appear 5 times. The ing sound, underlined in red, is also used 5 times. Alliteration, underlined in green, appears in the phrases weak and weary, as well as I nodded, nearly napping. Finally, the end rhyme in the word lore, door, and more add even more repetition. Not only will the raven not go away, but the hurt Poe feels for his lost love will never leave him, and that's what is symbolized in the repetition of these sounds and rhymes. Something significant in this poem is the last line of every stanza. The first 7 lines end in the word more, as underlined in orange, and the next 11 lines end in the bolded word nevermore. The word more in the beginning adds to the repetition, as well as foreshadows the raven's eventual prophecy of nevermore. Nevermore means never again. The speaker will never be able to see his love again, and this devastates him. This is clearly a representation of the loss Poe feels in his own life. We learned about Poe's life earlier, but let me refresh you. His real mom died when he was very young. He then married his cousin, Virginia, who was just 13 years old. The poem, To My Mother, may not be one of Poe's most popular poems, but it is definitely a significant representation of both his style and how his past consumes the content of his work.
Because I feel that in the heavens above, the angels, whispering to one another, can find among their burning terms of love none so devotional as that of mother. Therefore, that dear name I long have called you, you are more than mother unto me, and fill my heart of hearts where death installed you, in setting my Virginia's spirit free. My mother, my own mother, who died early, was but the mother of myself, but you are mother to the one I love so dearly, and thus are dearer than the mother I knew, by that infinity which my wife was dearer to my soul than its soul life.
This poem is about how Poe sees Virginia's mother, his mother-in-law, also his aunt, as a better mother than his deceased mother. She connects him to his love Virginia, and he finds some comfort in that. The rhyme scheme, shown in pink lettering at the end of each rhyme, makes the poem pleasant and comforting to read. Poe found comfort and love from Virginia's mother, and he uses his rhyme scheme to help the reader feel that as well. Poe alludes to heaven and angels, as underlined in blue. Then continues that reference with words like spirit and soul. This also adds to the safe and comforting mood that he has created. All that we see or see is but a dream within a dream. Men have called me mad, but the question is not yet settled, whether madness is or is not the loftiest intelligence. They who dream by day are cognizant of many things, which escape those who dream only by night. Much like this past marking period has taught us, the artist is very connected to his art, and Poe is a prime example of this. All of his poems have some kind of influence from his life, mainly the loss of his love Virginia. Poe idolizes Virginia so much in his work that it could be argued that he has lost touch with reality. The loss of his parents definitely affected him and made the loss of Virginia even harder. All in all, Edgar Allan Poe has used his pain and suffering to create something amazing and beautiful. Maybe this is a message to all of us, a message to society. How can we all turn pain into something beautiful?